Nurses have a very strong intuition. I think one of the most intuitive people on the planet. My journey with healthcare really started with my family. I was born into a family of nurses, so my mother is a nurse, my twin sister's a nurse. I have several cousins and relatives who are in the nursing profession. And because my mom was a nurse, I grew up in the healthcare environment, really seeing her in the hospital, being able to see her do her work, and I was really comfortable being in that environment.
In my own experience or in my own journey, the opposite was the case. Where nursing wasn't really encouraged for me, I had to almost fight to get into that place to where it was accepted, because being a nurse wasn't quite respected. It was all about being a physician. That's really good that you have that support.
The name Fifth Window actually comes from the idea of holistic wellness. So Fifth Window is really representative of all these different pillars, and the fifth window uniting those pillars. So our 4 pillars are really focused on creativity, growth, health, and spirit. And the fifth window is representative of all of us, the people who are working together to connect and foster all of our joy. And that's where the Nurse Your Joy tagline comes from.
Welcome to the Nurse on Purpose podcast, where we challenge media stereotypes about nursing and spotlight the incredible and diverse roles nurses play in healthcare. I'm your host, Nello. Every week, I'll be joined by a nurse who is reshaping the narrative. From frontline care to leadership, education, innovation, and beyond, our aim is to show the world that nursing is so much more than what we see on TV. Together, we'll explore how we can collaborate with media and other stakeholders to create authentic and inspiring portrayals of nurses. Let's begin the conversation and ignite change, one episode at a time.
Hey guys, and welcome again to the Nurse on Purpose podcast, where we challenge media stereotypes of nursing and highlight the incredible roles that nurses play in healthcare. Once again, I have an amazing guest for you. My guest today is Charlene Platon. Charlene is a family nurse practitioner, and she is the CEO and founder of the company Fifth Window. Charlene has a passion to nurse your joy. She looks to shape a healthcare culture that prioritizes the well-being of the clinician workforce. Charlene, you're welcome to the podcast. So happy to have you.
Thank you so much for having me, Chanello. It's really an honor to be here.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I'm going to read some of your bio because I just think it's so impressive. Charlene is a family nurse practitioner, a public health nurse, and she's the director of ambulatory nursing at Stanford Healthcare. She is a passionate healthcare innovator and a founding member of the Technology, Research, and Innovation Steering Committee at SHC, where she represents innovation in ambulatory nursing. Charlene was also selected as one of the 12 inaugural Johnson & Johnson Nurse Innovation Fellows. And during her fellowship, she focused on supporting and promoting nursing and clinician well-being. And that's what led her to start Fifth Window, which is a nurse-founded digital wellness hub that matches nurses with self-care resources and provides a supportive nursing community. As Fifth Window CEO and co-founder, Charlene aims to shape a healthcare culture that prioritizes the well-being of the clinician workforce. These are amazing goals and amazing ideals. I love when nurses look to support other nurses and just bring out what is innate in us, that compassion, that joy, and help to manage the burnout. First of all, just share your journey in nursing up until this point. And then later on, we'll talk more about, what Fifth Window represents for you.
Yeah, sure. Sounds great. Thank you again for having me on the podcast. It's wonderful to be here. And my journey with healthcare really started with my family. And I was born into a family of nurses. So my mother is a nurse. My twin sister's a nurse. I have several cousins and relatives who are in the nursing profession. And because my mom was a nurse, I grew up in the healthcare environment, really seeing her in the hospital, being able to see her do her work. And I was really comfortable being in that environment. And so I always thought of it as a potential opportunity as a career when I was pursuing my education and my college degree. And it's interesting because I didn't, even having that background, I didn't always have nursing as maybe the first choice for my career. I actually previously wanted to be in architecture or in engineering. My dad is actually an engineer, so I would learn more about that side of the industry from him.
Yeah.
And it was interesting because when I was thinking about which route to go, my mother really urged me to apply to nursing school. And so I did, and I was accepted, which was wonderful because I know how competitive it is to be accepted into a nursing program.
Absolutely.
And so through that, I took it as a sign to pursue it and see what might come out of that. And so when I was in undergrad, it really solidified the decision for me to become a nurse because I was able to be in different opportunities to work with patients and with healthcare workers. And it really solidified that impact that I could see for myself in terms of the healthcare industry and how I could help patients and staff and the industry for the better.
That's wonderful. I think what struck me was that your mom encouraged you to pursue nursing. And I think we align on several points, but in my own experience or in my own journey, the opposite was the case. Where nursing wasn't really encouraged for me, I had to almost fight to get into that place where it was like accepted, because being a nurse wasn't quite respected. It was all about being a physician. So that's really good that you had that support and the backing. And like you said, you worked hard and did all of, the application process and got in and rode the storm, and you have your mom's support because she's already in there. And so you can learn firsthand from her, what her life and what her experiences are like. What does Fifth Window, how did you come about that name and that company, and what does that mean to you?
Yeah. So being a part of Fifth Window and starting that work really stemmed from my time as a Johnson & Johnson Nurse Innovation Fellow. I started in the fellowship in 2019, and each of the fellows were tasked with having a main project that they pursue throughout the duration of the fellowship. And my initial idea was actually very different from a focus on nursing well-being. But then in 2020, we all know what happened with the global pandemic and so many shifts in focuses and priorities. And at that time, during May 2020, still fairly early on into the pandemic, SONCIEL, which is a nursing innovation society, collaborated with Johnson & Johnson to host one of the first virtual nursing hackathons. And this one in particular was focused on solutions to support COVID-19 or support initiatives in that time. And one of the tracks was focused on self-care and resiliency. So I joined that track because it really interested me. I had my own experiences with mental health and challenges during that time and before, and a lot of it really manifested during that time in a pretty severe way. So having panic attacks and having secondary trauma through what was happening. And it really resonated with me to be part of that track. And so as part of that team, I was really fortunate because we were in a group with a lot of other passionate nurses and technical experts. And our team actually won that track for self-care and resiliency. And that initial idea is what eventually became Fifth Window. That's how it started. The name Fifth Window actually comes from the idea of holistic wellness. So Fifth Window is really representative of all these different pillars, and the Fifth Window uniting those pillars. So our 4 pillars are really focused on creativity, growth, health, and spirit. And the Fifth Window is representative of all of us, the people who are working together to connect and foster all of our joy. And that's where the Nurse Your Joy tagline comes from, because together we can nurse our joy and help each other grow in these different pillars.
Wonderful. So if somebody were to sign up for your app, what kinds of resources can they hope to find?
Yeah, absolutely. We had initially launched the first version of our app back in 2022, and that was actually a pretty different focus when we first launched. That was more focused on providing wellness resources to nurses to promote their individual well-being. So
Yeah.
at the time, we had recorded self-care practices like meditations and different types of activities that nurses could do on their own time. But then we also hosted live community live streams and events that people could participate in.
Yeah.
And what we found was that most of the people on our community platform actually preferred joining those live stream events and building those connections in real time. So
Yeah.
we had, in the last few months, decided to rebrand and change our app so it'd be more focused on the community side of our product and of our company. And so we are actually rebuilding our app now, and it's going to be launched soon. And this new version of the app will have the opportunity to join events, whether they're in person or virtual, where you could connect with other nurses. And we're expanding to healthcare professionals too as a whole, not just limited to nurses, because we know the importance of having wellness and joy throughout the entire healthcare team.
Yeah.
But the resources are really promoting those different pillars that we stand for in our company. So really promoting activities that are focused on creativity, growth, health, and spirit, all four different things that we don't always have the opportunity to explore when we're in our professions and when we're in our training. So the resources that we provide will be centered on that. But for sure, more to come with the launch of our app. And in the meantime, we are hosting our events and starting to host individual events. So eventually we hope to have a membership connected with that.
Oh, that is wonderful. I really do love that you've turned something that was a pain point for you, because one of the things that I remember as a nursing student, we're taught so much of the science, but nobody really talks about the self-care or the self-compassion or the well-being of nurses, nor do they even, I don't think it's even thought about to be in our curriculum, right? How do we deal with our own mental health issues and our own mental health concerns? That's not something that we were taught to think about. So being the voice, right, and bringing these to nurses, I think at every level, starting from nursing schools all the way up till experienced nurses, I think will benefit greatly from Fifth Window, because the goal is to create a safe haven, if I'm correct, right? It's to create a safe space where nurses can find resources that help them to deal with mental health issues, or just a place for them to have permission to really be vulnerable.
Yes, absolutely. I know that throughout my own nursing journey and throughout the journeys of so many other nurses that I know, there has been this missing piece of having this safe space and having this opportunity to voice your thoughts and voice your opinions and what you're feeling in a way that feels authentic to yourself, but also is very representative of your needs and the support that you might be asking for in the moment. Because there's so much that comes with being a nurse, and there's so much of an emotional toll and a mental and physical toll.
Yeah.
And without the space, it's really hard to continue to have that drive and that passion for such a challenging profession. So we really wanted to fill that gap just from each of our own individual experiences too.
And I think that it will help with nurse retention, because there is a huge exodus. We know what happened during COVID, that nurses were just done. They had it. They were burnt out. Many nurses left the bedside and just found different ways to practice as nurses, or left the profession altogether. So I think that when we can create resources that help to take care of nurses, they feel valued and they're more motivated to stay within the profession, stay at the bedside, or what have you. It's just a natural part of caring for a person. When a person feels cared for mentally, emotionally, spiritually, they're able to now give their all. They're able to give their best to their patients and to their colleagues. And I respect you and I admire that you're driving this mission forward. So there was something that you mentioned in that article, and you talked about nurses as innovators, right? How we are able to identify problems and solve them in resourceful and creative ways, right? And how our journey as nurses can actually teach us something about making a big impact by solving the problems that other nurses are facing. Can you talk more about that innovative process? What did you go through on your journey to creating Fifth Window?
Yeah, absolutely. And I do want to acknowledge, speaking to something that you mentioned a little earlier in terms of the environment where we feel support. One of the major inspirations for Fifth Window too was just my own experience as a nurse at the bedside and having a supportive leader and having a supportive manager and being in an environment where I really felt more nurtured or cared for or that my opinions really mattered. And
Yeah.
so I think that it makes such a huge difference, right? Because there were so many times when I could have quit the profession, but then
Mm.
those little bits of, opportunities to share your voice really helped to keep me in for much longer than I probably would have.
Would have, yeah.
But I just wanted to mention that because I think it's so important, what you shared there, and I think
Yeah.
it's a big inspiration for why we're doing what we're doing with building this community. But I really appreciate you acknowledging that.
Yeah, thank you. When we go through things in life, we have two options, right? We can fold and we can sort of cower away or run, or we can face it head on and we can rise. We can create solutions to the problems. Because if you're feeling that way, chances are many other people might be feeling the same way, but they don't have the time or they don't have the courage or they feel like it might be punitive actions taken. But it just takes one person to rise from that and say, you know what, something should be done and something can be done, and I want to be the person that does that. And that takes a lot of courage, because it will
Yeah.
stretch you in ways that you probably never imagined you could be stretched, but it's
Right.
all for the best. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's actually a great segue to your question about innovation because
Mhm.
a lot of my journey with innovation actually stemmed from my experiences inpatient and at the
Mhm.
bedside. And I didn't know it at the time, but I was really an entrepreneur,
Yeah.
innovating within the healthcare system
Yeah.
because I saw challenges that I wanted to help to resolve and find solutions for. And I know how difficult it is to be the person to kind of proclaim like, hey, there's a problem, I have this
Yeah.
idea to fix it, and then to actually take those steps to help fix it.
Absolutely.
There's so many steps and there's so many parts and pieces where that can be really challenging.
Mhm.
And for some reason, I don't even know why, but for some reason I've always had this drive to find a solution or to see,
Solution. Yeah.
yeah, to see things in a different way because
Yeah.
and I know nurses so well because I've just grown up in an environment where I was surrounded by them and I know they're smart. I know
Yeah.
that they're talented. They have
Yeah.
so much expertise. So I feel that there was just so much opportunity for us to actually use that for creating some solutions that are really meaningful and impactful. And for Fifth Window, with how we approached it, a lot of it was organic, just stemming from what we had looked at and done during our work in the hackathon, but it's honestly an ongoing journey of trying things and trying new things, seeing what works, seeing what doesn't,
Yeah.
and it's just kind of that concept of trying and until you come across a solution or a
Yeah.
product that really resonates and you can see the impact that you really want to make in
Yeah.
the population that you're serving and seeing that larger picture there. So it's been an ongoing journey for us, definitely a roller coaster, but I feel that I wouldn't have it any other way because I feel like it's just something that I've been wanting to do and that
Yeah.
resonates so much.
That's amazing. And now you're not currently bedside, you're in leadership, right? You're working in a director position at Stanford. How was that shift for you, moving from bedside work and to, now being in executive positions? And did you feel like somehow you lost a bit of your nursing? I don't know. I don't know what to call it, like superpower, whatever. And the reason why I'm asking this is a lot of times people think that you have to be a certain kind of nurse to be considered a real nurse, right? And I think we share that in common. And so I just wanted you to touch a little bit about that transition.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting because if you look at my career from the start, I've been a nurse now since 2012. So that's about 13 years this year.
Yeah.
And now most of my time in my career has been in leadership. So when I started my nursing journey, I never saw myself in that. I always saw myself being more of a clinical nurse.
Yeah.
And so I really resonated with my identity as a clinical nurse and supporting the specific patient demographic and population that I was really passionate about, which was more focused on public health and,
Yeah.
supporting lower income patients or patients who are in a huge need in the community. And I think that with the transition to leadership, in some ways it was very obvious, and in some ways it just really wasn't. And I think for some of the more obvious ways, I always gravitated towards some of those leadership opportunities, being involved in shared leadership, taking on leadership opportunities within my communities or within on the committees at the hospital. I realized looking back on my career, every single role that I've had in nursing and in healthcare, I have done something leadership related in it.
Yeah.
And so
it was always there. It was always in the horizon.
It's kind of like hindsight is 2020, I think.
Right.
So it kind of, when I looked back, I was like, oh, actually, maybe this wasn't so cloudy, or maybe it was more clear than I thought. But what really started that formal transition into my first formal leadership role was because somebody took a chance on me, and I applied for a leadership role not knowing where I would go. And it was a time when I was finishing nurse practitioner school, I had the choice to either be a nurse practitioner resident in my dream residency, which had everything that I wanted. It had the population I wanted. It had the cohort that I could, be with. And I had the mentorship and preceptorship support that I really wanted. And I got into that. But then I also got an offer to be a manager in a position where I could do a lot of performance improvement and innovation at the same time. So I had to decide between the two. And my gut told me to choose the leadership path. And I haven't looked back ever since. So I think sometimes even when things don't really make sense in the moment, it's really trusting your own intuition. And nurses have a very strong intuition. I think they're one of the most intuitive people on the planet. Really listening to that for yourself can tell you everything that you need to know during different parts of your journey. And I think those are the moments that when you look back, you'll see that a lot of it made sense.
I mean, that's such a profound thing that you've mentioned, is that you were almost being prepared the entire time for where you are now without even knowing it. And because because you have an eye to, you walk into a room and you already start thinking, oh, this could be better. I could make this better. That's what a leader does, right? Nurses do that by default. We make something out of nothing. We can improvise. We can create. So in your role as a leader, do you ever have any feelings of guilt, let's say, especially during COVID? I think most of us who had sort of left the bedside prior to COVID started to feel, I really should be back at the bedside. They need me more there. Nurses are going through so much right now. There's such an emphasis that is placed on bedside nursing, as if it's like the central pinnacle of being a nurse is being at the bedside. So did you ever feel any kind of guilt for not being at the bedside in those critical moments?
Yeah, and actually to address your former question too about how I felt in terms of the transition with leadership, the more that I progressed in my leadership journey, the more I felt distanced or maybe removed from my former identity as a bedside or clinical nurse and also clinical nurse practitioner. And it felt really, really hard to adjust to that. And in some ways, it's still an adjustment. It was, I would say the most challenging was when we did experience those early stages of the pandemic, or the parts of the pandemic that were extremely challenging. And there are still a lot of challenges with it. But I remember in that first year in 2020, a lot of my panic attacks came because of the conflicts I had within my own mind about who am I as a nurse? What should I be doing at this time to support my community? Am I doing enough? Am I good enough? Can I even still practice clinically? Does that mean I'm no longer a nurse if I can't? Can I even be helpful? So there were all of these internal questions and really self-critical questions that I asked myself that challenged who I felt I should be as a nurse and how I, saw myself and how I think other people expected to see me as a nurse, because there was a lot of guilt and shame because I didn't necessarily take those steps to volunteer at the front lines to support patients who were truly impacted by COVID and who were, in the ICU or in the floors that were dedicated to COVID patients. There was a lot of guilt that I carried there for a long time, even if I helped to support the pandemic in different ways through, facilitating workflows that helped with other types of efficiencies and other types of support. I didn't feel like it was on the same vein or it wasn't enough. I just kept on thinking that what I'm doing isn't enough as a nurse and I should have done more. So there was definitely those feelings of guilt there. And I still struggle with it today in some respects, but I think it's a challenge when you know that that's what most people consider nurses to do and what nurses have been founded on is their clinical practice. So I definitely think it's a struggle.
I hear your heart, and I think that, if I can offer some sort of comfort and hope, and you mentioned this, is that you were operational in a different aspect of nursing, and you're supporting patients. Though you may not be at the bedside, you played your own part in the leadership arena, in the management. If you're not there, somebody has to do it, right? Somebody has to be there. And so we all have our own different parts to play. I wasn't at the bedside as well. I resonate with what you said because I felt like, could I be doing more, right? Although I started off sort of because I was in the clinic setting, but eventually everyone was like, go home, no more clinics, we're done. So at that point, I was like, well, what am I going to do now? Because my career is, in that pediatric world and taking care of sick babies, but in a clinic setting. And then so that was lost and I was gone and I was home. I started working in a different setting altogether that didn't have anything to do with bedside, but it was still teaching, patient education, patient testing, and then, vaccine, championing the vaccinations and things like that. So very different from being bedside, but at the same time, somebody had to do those things, that work. And that was what I chose to do. And that's really what I was able to do, right? So I think that you function in the place of your calling, and that's the best place that you should function, because outside of that, you'll always be lost, you'll always be confused, but you're where you're supposed to be at every given moment. So I hope that guilt and that feeling of doubt can dissipate and just be gone forever. Because Charlene was where she was supposed to be during COVID, and that's that. Alrighty, so
that resonates a lot. I think that speaks volumes for where everyone was on their journeys during that time, and just in general. I think that the lessons that we need to learn come during the times that they present themselves, and there's a lot that we could learn at every step of our journey.
And I think that's the reason why I like to talk to people that are in diverse roles, because there needs to be a cultural shift, right, that values the diversity of nursing roles equally. Bedside nursing is not the end all be all. And even nursing students who may not really fancy the bedside, they feel like they have to do that, like stereotypical 3 years of med surg before they move on to other things, or whatever, ICU or emerge, before they move on to other things. Otherwise, they haven't arrived at nursing. And I think we need to come away from that mindset so that nurses who desire to be in home health, or they desire to be public health nurses or community health nurses, they don't feel less than, and they still feel like and feel confident in their own contributions, even if it's not at the bedside,
Yes, absolutely. There's so much that each type of nurse has to offer in their different settings. And there's reasons for why those specialties and those settings were created and in need of a nurse in the first place. So I think it really speaks to the fact that nursing expertise has evolved, and it has continued to be dynamic and to grow. So it's really exciting to see how the profession has transformed over time and how much our expertise can be used in different ways.
And I think that with just kind of circling it with the media can sometimes overly focus on our bedside work on these shows, and that can affect our profession or the way people perceive nursing as a whole. Because on some shows you'll see physicians and they might show up in a completely unrelated, like it's not even a medical show, but there'll be a doctor maybe on the board of directors, but nurses are always bedside in every show. So
Yeah.
sometimes that contributes because then people don't see nurses as being anything else, right? And I think that you mentioned this also in your article. Can you tell that I'm like in love with that article?
No, I love that. Thank you. I love
You
it too. I was glad that they were able to share that. That was really cool.
Yeah, and this is that J&J article, where you talk about permission to be vulnerable. Again, you were saying that because of the elevation of the nursing profession through nursing innovation, people can say, "Oh, this is a nurse, like this is what they do. They don't just clean poop every day. They're smart, they're innovative, and they're creative," right? And so you said that innovation empowers nurses to take seats at the table or bring our own seat. I thought that was such a great statement. And I think that, you're in leadership, someone else is working in innovation, someone else is an author, someone else is a coach. If that can be highlighted more in the media, that creates wider understanding of who nurses are and really helps to elevate the narrative. So,
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting because speaking to your point earlier about how nurses are portrayed in the media versus how physicians might be portrayed, no one actually questions if a provider or a physician is in these different types of fields or of expertise,
yeah.
because they associate that with their expertise and the different potential opportunities that they can be part of. So I really see that being the pathway for nurses too, as we continue to show the world all the skills that we have. And COVID was actually a really good platform for that, even if it was a very, very challenging one.
Yes.
It was a pathway that I think that the profession really needed. And I think that it really not only gives us the permission, but it enables us to be able to step into those different positions and opportunities, because we've already demonstrated how much expertise that we have and how much our skills can help support many different avenues.
And so while we're talking about the media, we're going to pivot into our game time, because that's the fun part, right? And so first, I want to ask you if you watch any shows, any medical dramas, and what is your take? I know we just talked about it a little bit on the innovation side, but what is your take overall of how nurses are portrayed in the media, and what would you like to see differently?
Yeah, I've definitely watched several medical shows throughout my journey, and it's interesting because we can learn a lot about how the state of the world was because of how nurses and healthcare professionals were portrayed during that time.
Yeah.
So a lot of the older shows might be more likely to demonstrate nursing or healthcare in a way that is maybe not quite as accurate in terms of the realities of the profession. But one of my favorite shows in general that actually is a little bit older is the show Scrubs. And Scrubs is one of my favorites because I first of all love comedy, but I actually consider it to be one of the most accurate representations of medicine, and especially with the different interdisciplinary care team members that we have and each of the stories that they have and how it all, meshes together within a healthcare or hospital setting. But I also know that other shows, like Grey's Anatomy, it is really entertaining to watch. But I know that the portrayal of nursing in particular it's more likely to be inaccurate. But there's definitely an evolution with how shows have portrayed nursing, and there has been more of a shift to nurses as the main leads in different shows.
Yes.
So I started to watch St. Dennis Medical, which is a new comedy that's on Peacock, and it's actually really interesting because it's from the perspective of a nurse. It tends to be more in the nursing perspective, which I noticed right away. And I thought that was really cool. And I thought that it was a really nice way to see what happens from the nurse's perspective as they're with the patients 24/7, whereas other shows like House might not show that. They might show the physicians with the patients 24/7.
Yeah.
So I think there's definitely been an evolution and a shift, and more attention is being portrayed in attention to how nurses are portrayed in the media. So that's been really nice to see.
Yeah, I heard of that one. And then also The Pit, which is on HBO. That one really has the nurses doing more nursing work, being intelligent. A couple of episodes in now, and so far so good. I'm impressed with that. So I really like that the media is starting to pay attention to our voices. And then, of course, there's room for improvement. The Resident is another one that I really enjoy. There's a nurse practitioner on that. Yeah. The nurse practitioner on that show, and she is top notch. They're doing a better job, which I'm so grateful for. But I think that over time, we need to keep on growing and keep expanding and keep adding, especially with the functions and the roles and the diversity of nursing. That's something I would really like to see come alive more. So, yeah, we're going to play our game now. Are you ready?
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's do it. Okay. So this is my handy dandy jar, and we're going to grab a category. So if you haven't seen our show before, this is the part of the show where we play a game, and I'm going to turn Charlene into a screenwriter, and I'll pick a category from the jar and read it. Well, I'll shake the jar first and pick a category. And whatever I pick, she has to come up with a plot line for her own show that features a nurse or a nurse lead. Are you ready? All right,
yeah, ready.
Shake. Okay, here we go. Oh, this is interesting. So your category is reality TV.
Awesome.
Do you watch reality TV?
You know, I have to say I am a huge fan of reality TV.
Okay.
It's probably my favorite genre of TV.
Okay.
I think just because we learn so much behind the scenes about what goes on in different, different settings, things that we might not have an experience firsthand. And I think that's really the case too for medicine and healthcare. So if I had the opportunity to make my own reality TV show that's focused on, the healthcare profession or nursing, I would definitely want it to center on a nurse who is a new graduate nurse. Oh, wow. And preferably a person of color, and just share more about them navigating the world of healthcare from their eyes as someone who's new to the profession. When you're newer to the profession, there's a lot of things that you see and maybe that you might notice that others who are probably have been in the profession for a longer time or more experience may not see quite as easily. Yeah. So I think it'd be a very interesting perspective to have either a new graduate nurse or a cohort of new graduate nurses in a residency or whatever it might be to follow their stories as they go into their new floors and they work with other types of nurses like preceptors that they might have, or or teachers, or research nurses, or there's just so many because a lot of new grad nurses interact with all those types of nurses, so it'd be a really good way to show different sides of nursing.
Oh, that is such a wonderful, wonderful show. That is awesome. Yes, bravo. We're coming for you.
I know. Hire me, bravo, please.
Andy Cohen, we're coming for you.
Yeah. Yes, please.
But I think that would be so cool. And also, just like you said, fresh perspective, right? They're seeing things with fresh eyes, and they're like, oh, we can innovate, we can create, we can make stuff, we can change this thing about our floor, unit, whatever it is, make it better. Just the way that they are so bright-eyed and, clear vision, clear ideas, clear goals. And that's and just to see how the other nurses respond to them, the older nurses. And sometimes, how it is in nursing. I won't say much, but yeah, that's an awesome answer. Yay, thank you so much. I loved it. Yeah. Alrighty, so we are pretty much, we're at the end of our show, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. Charlene, where can people find you and where can they find Fifth Window?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm active on LinkedIn. So if you find me on my page, Charlene Platon, I believe I'm the only Charlene on LinkedIn, Charlene Platon, but you could find me there, follow me. I'd love to connect with you. And then if you want to learn more about Fifth Window, you can visit our website at www.fifthwindow.com. So FIFTH window.com. And that page has all of our social media links as well, but we are active on Instagram and YouTube, where we share some of our events as well. So definitely reach out to us.
Okay, that's awesome. And who would you recommend to be a guest on the show if you could pick someone?
Yeah, I would actually love to recommend my twin sister, Charmaine, and
Okay.
her name's Charmaine Horn. She is also a nurse, and it's
Awesome.
funny because we're identical twins, but we chose totally different paths of nursing. So she's a psychiatric nurse by background. I was more of a critical care telemetry nurse by background.
Hmm.
And she's now transitioned to entrepreneurship as well. So she is the founder of Oasis Qigong, and she's a certified Qigong practitioner. So that's more of kind of like you could describe it as a gentler form of Tai Chi. So focusing
Okay.
a lot on the yin energy versus the
Mm,
yang energy of
that's
Tai Chi.
awesome.
So it's a
Yeah,
really, really cool path.
yeah, that's really great. I saw that you were going to have an event soon with Fifth Window that featured like Qigong. So I'm guessing she's facilitating that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
she's actually now one of our ambassadors with Fifth Window. So
Okay.
you'll be seeing her in more of our events that we have throughout 2025. So we're really excited to collaborate with her in that respect. So definitely, if you're interested in that and other events, we hope to see you at Fifth
Yeah.
Window.
Thank you. Guys, please give it up for my guest, Charlene. And Charmaine, if you're listening, we're going to reach out to you and connect with you. So, guys, please connect with Charlene. I love what you're doing with Fifth Window, and I think that your win with J&J as the Innovation Fellow was well deserved. And so, guys,
Thank
thank you
you.
so much for tuning in once again. And I hope that you guys have a wonderful week. Until next time, bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks for hanging with me till the end. I hope you gained some valuable insight into the world of nursing. If today's episode inspired you, please like, subscribe, and share with someone who needs to hear about the amazing work nurses are doing. Let's keep breaking stereotypes and reshaping the narrative together. I'll see you next time.